Okay, so I'm counting down. I'm getting ready to open up Clubhouse and we should be going live any second now. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Enjoying Life Fully First Fridays. And our topic today is Love on Top. This is the second in a series of what will happen monthly, the Friday of each month. And we're just going to select topics as women that we can gather and chat about, talk about, just to discover different perspectives, how we navigate life, to be supportive, and to be encouraging and inspiring to one another. Hopefully, those that view this will be empowered, or even send us some comments. Let us know, you know what, I don't believe that what you were saying, or I don't agree with that. We're open to that. We're not suggesting that we are fluid in all that we're sharing, but it is our story, it is our voice, it is our perspective. We are not presenting ourselves here as authorities, although we may be authorities in different spaces. We are here as women gathered to chat it up tonight. So we have three beautiful women that will be joining me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Enjoying Life Fully first. It is an organization that exists to empower, inspire, equip, and enrich teen girls and women as they journey through life. I desire to see women thrive in spite of the challenges that they encounter. And so that could be both in relationships, that could be professionally, that could be personally, own personal growth. It could be in the process of grieving a loss. It could be a whole host of things that sometimes can just stifle us and prevent us from thriving. And so one of my, I believe, life aspirations and callings is to facilitate women living their lives with a greater degree of fulfillment. And so I welcome connecting with any of you and listening to you and chatting up with you. That's just what my heart is to do. And so I have, as I mentioned earlier, three significant women. I said beautiful before, but I want to escalate that a little bit. They're significant and magnificent women that are going to tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we're going to jump into the topic. So tonight we have Emmeline, Shekinah, and Tamir, and they're going to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to frame the topic again, and then we're going to jump right in. And if you have comments, I welcome you sharing your comments with us. We'll be hopefully able to respond, but as you know, we're trying to stick to a timeline. So if your comments are not answered here, we will make sure that we get the opportunity to respond to you, whether it is by response on social media or however you engage us. So I'm going to start with, just as you appear on my screen, Emmeline, you appear first. So if you don't mind introducing yourself, just welcome that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emmeline Falcon. I'm 25. I'm a Latino, background in Dominican. I have my master's degree in public administration, and I have a passion for the nonprofit work.
Awesome. Yes, she does. And I'm going to try not to add too much to how they introduce themselves, because they are each unique and special to me. I adore and admire who they are. And so I'm going to do my best as to just host and facilitate and not really monopolize and all of that, but they are special, unique women, as you will get to understand. All right, Shekinah, do tell us about who you are.
Yes, so I'm Shekinah. I am 31. I'll be 32 in a couple of weeks. And I have my degree in psychology. And I'm really passionate about the youth and also a health side and understanding how mental and health psychology connects with their mental and wholeness well-being. So yeah, that's me.
Yes, sounds like that holistic. I rephrase something that I offer when I speak to individuals now. I say I offer a cocoon of care, because I just want to wrap everybody. I just want to surround them with the services and care that's necessary, again, to help them feel like they're thriving, or at least progressing in life towards whatever they desire or aspire towards. All right, and we have Tamir. Tamir, do tell us about you.
Yeah, well, hey everyone, I'm Tamir. Emmeline, I didn't know you were Dominican, so hey, my sister. I am too. So I am 35. I consider myself to be a lover of God, a lover of people. I am married. This month is actually our 2nd year anniversary. So I still consider myself a newlywed.
Hang on to that newlywed status. Hang on to it.
I'm a stepmom of a soon-to-be 10-year-old amazing young girl. And I'm also a mama-to-be to another girl. And so due in April, very excited about that. And so professionally, I'm a clinical social worker, and I currently lead a mental health organization that provides community counseling and home counseling to children and families in about 7 counties in New Jersey. So that's me, a little bit about me.
Yeah, that sounds like a full plate, doesn't it, ladies? 7 counties.
Wow.
And I'm just gonna offer this, during the pandemic, one of the things I believe that rose or bubbled up was really the necessity for care in the mental and wellness space, the mental health and wellness space. And so I believe that's going to continue. So all of you have a thread of that. I heard wellness, I heard care, I heard concern, I heard community. So I am amongst my tribe, y'all. I'm amongst my tribe. They too offer a cocoon of care in different ways. So thank you for joining tonight. I know time is valuable, but hopefully this topic will inspire you just to share some of your nuggets of wisdom and drop them gems. And in the places where we are less familiar, just sit back and take notes, and mental notes, or whatever type of notes it is that helps us just be our best self. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen, because this is going to be the first area that we're just going to kind of focus on. We're going to focus on a lot on ourselves in the beginning, because in order to know love or to experience love, we need to love ourselves. Okay, and so here we go. Let's see. I may be having a little bit of a technical difficulty. And if I do, I will just proceed with asking the question as opposed to, yes, so I'm just gonna move on. So a definition that I found inspiring and want to use it to initiate our conversation is loving myself is, and this is how it's framed, the willingness and ability to allow me the right to make my own choices for myself without any insistence that I satisfy others. Now, we can extrapolate this, break this apart however we want. I'm going to start out with what really resonated with me. And it is the last portion of the statement, without any insistence that I satisfy others. Because in loving ourselves, my perspective, oftentimes we find ourselves allowing love to be experienced when we satisfy others. It's not even about prioritizing ourselves or seeing ourselves so valuable that we want to satisfy ourselves first. So let's start there. While we're conversing, I'm going to try and see if I can bring it up, because I think it's a great reference point. If you're like me, you're visual and might need to look back at it every couple of seconds. So I'm going to keep working through that. But again, I'm just going to read it. And whoever wants to come in and tackle it and talk about what it means to you, whether it's something you feel like you are in the process of, something you struggle with, whether it's something you feel like you've accomplished. And if you did, we want to know your tools and how you did it. And just come from that perspective. Again, this is just a conversation. We're ladies chatting it up and just looking to understand how we can love ourselves before we can love others. So again, the statement is, loving myself is the willingness and ability to allow me the right to make my own choices for myself without any insistence that I satisfy others. So whoever wants to jump in can go right ahead.
Well, for me, one of the things that comes to mind is that I think as women who were girls at some point, we're not often taught this concept of loving ourselves and what's the word, Gwen? Is it satisfying or
right, satisfying ourselves, right?
Right. Like I find that I was taught more about like loving others and sacrificing for others and putting others first before myself. And so for me, the journey of actually loving myself and giving myself the permission to do that, to figure out what that looked like, didn't come until a lot later, as a young adult, maybe in my 20s. But it was this new concept of like, well, what does it mean to love myself and to satisfy myself? I mean, I feel like that's kind of countercultural in some ways, and so, I mean, I think now I have a better idea of what that looks like. And as I transition into a new role as a mom, I'm thinking about what that's going to look like now is I'll have another human being that I'm responsible for, and how I still have to put myself first and love myself first. And in doing so, it's for also the good of other people around me.
Yes, that is huge. I appreciate that you referenced the fact that you have a new life entering, and beginning with yourself also cascades to those you have influence over, right? And those whose lives you're going to be, to some degree, responsible for and engaging and influential. So thank you for sharing that. I'll probably circle back a little bit, but want to hear a little bit from Shekinah and Emmeline, and whichever order, just as you appeared on my screen, is how I said your names. But do feel free to jump in.
I would have to agree, especially from a cultural perspective. I was raised that, you are a good daughter if you take care of your parents, and you give back to your family, and you go to school and you're a good student and you go to college and you make a career so you can sustain yourself and you can help sustain others. It was never about what makes you happy. That's not something that I was ever asked, or even at 25, I'm still not asked what makes me happy. It took honestly me going to therapy for other reasons. I thought I was going to therapy to set boundaries with my family, which is another big one. And I was asked, okay, you do all these things for others, but what do you do for you? And I really had to sit there and say, I don't actually do anything for myself because I haven't really thought myself as a person of myself. I always thought of myself as a sister, as a daughter, as a friend. So it was a really hard pill for me to swallow, to realize that I've been living my life to help sustain others, because that's the way that I was raised. That was the right way. So I think I'm still in that process of learning what it is for me without feeling selfish for not doing everything that I do for others. So
yeah.
So I'm gonna say, I'm sorry, Shekinah.
No, I like what
I was
you
gonna say,
said.
you touched on something so huge that is countercultural, right? And just recently I had a conversation with a woman. I'm gonna call her one of my hearts with ears, and I use that phrase for people who allow me space to just kind of, and one of the things we talked about was the influence of generational, and I'm not gonna call them curses, but just generational learnings, right? We're passed on these learnings, and I feel like previous culture of women of color were not empowered, encouraged to see themselves first. It was about all the other responsibilities that was expected of them. And dare you sequester some time for yourself. That's where the term, I believe, originates, selfish and self-centered and all of these things. No, I need to breathe. Like I need to step away and really refresh myself so that I can be better to you all, better in this environment, better in that environment. So Emmeline, thank you for bringing that up. I think we might circle back to that. Like, how do you navigate that? And how do you retrain yourself? How do you equip yourself to move past that? Because you're still in these familiar confines, right? You're still in these families that see womanhood, see, our role as X, as we continue to break some of those barriers or learnings. So just wanted to kind of hone in on that. So go ahead, Shekinah. I'm sorry I jumped in and
No worries. Good stuff. I want to say that I do connect with Evelyn and Tamar. I connect because of the growing up, you are taught, or I was taught to do everything for others. But more so when it comes to family, they have a certain perspective or a certain view or way that they want you to behave, want you to sacrifice for. So growing up, and as I became an adult, I hit that stage like, what do I want for myself? What can I do for myself? Like, especially in terms of callings and giftings, like I give so to others, I help others in their callings, but when it really comes to, you're really reflecting on yourself, it's like, wow, I need to get to know myself and love myself even more. And when you read the quote, it reminded me of freedom, because once you do understand to love yourself and not satisfy others, there's a sense of freedom. Like you're not held by other people's expectations of you. I'm still learning in that area in different seasons of my life. I'm still learning that, but it reminded me of a quote that like stuck to me. And it says the greatest freedom is having nothing to prove. So I don't have to prove myself to anybody. I don't have to prove myself to my husband. I don't have to prove myself even to God. Like I'm already proven. I don't have to prove myself. So that quote that you just said,
You might need to say that again. Say to,
Yeah.
you said your husband, we got that, but say it again. Because I think we struggle, right?
Yeah,
I appreciate, and I'm interject for just a moment, that biblically, God reminds us that condemnation is not of him, right? But there's just this innate mental hold that we place on ourselves. Again, learnings, right? Social learnings, familiar learnings, maybe even gender learnings about putting ourselves first, prioritizing ourselves, and not feeling, right? Not feeling that we have to satisfy others. And you said it hugely, even the context of how we place God, because God is far more than we can even imagine or fathom. However, he has given us promises and he's given us a roadmap. So I just had to hone in on that, Shekinah. That was really powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's real good. Thank you. But it was a long process. It wasn't like overnight. It took a lot of patience. And certain areas, like I said, I'm still growing in and stuff like that, and understanding who I am as a woman, the full woman. There's aspects that I've grown, but understanding how to even leading as a Black woman, especially, I'm still coming to like, okay, this is it. This is who I am. This is how I need to love myself. And going back to the generational thing, for me, it was all about my parents would use the verse, love thy neighbor as yourself. Like you give others, but it says love thy neighbor as yourself. So you can't love your neighbor if you don't first love yourself. So even it's a biblical principle to love yourself, to know yourself, and then you're able to function in loving others and satisfying others.
Yes, I love that. I love that. My mind is like spiraling right now. I got like 100 questions in my head, but I'm gonna slow it down. And I'm gonna kind of go back to the quote again, because it's the willingness and ability, right? The willingness that requires on our part. And I said a few moments ago, kind of like breaking barriers. You know, many times there's so much attributed to a woman when she breaks a glass ceiling, right? When she's the first this and the first that, you know, something that's more public. But how much of us daily, you know, are we breaking barriers? But again, whether they're social, whether they're familiar, you know, sometimes it can be even spiritual, because a lot of context of church and spirituality still see women as in these very specific roles. And that is a whole debate for another day, because, you know, all of that is by denomination and, you know, all of what people believe in. But just recognizing that we have to have that willingness, right? That willingness to invest in learning and discovering ourselves, invest that time. And one of the things I heard really largely during the pandemic was self-care. And even for some of those that I had the privilege of coaching or just doing some lay counseling or just encouraging, I feel like there's a misconception about self-care, right? That it's going to be the end all, solve all, and resolve, you know, all of those areas of satisfaction for ourselves. May I hear a little bit about what you attribute self-care? How would you define it? And what role does that play in your life, in your ability to satisfy yourself before you satisfy others, recognizing the importance of that? I don't want to say too much because I'm already framing it, but just want to really hear what self-care is from your perspective. How do you integrate that in your life? And what have been some of your successes? And may I ask some of your challenges, and even in the fullness of how you do life? And so you don't have to answer all of those. I tend to give a couple of questions and you can dissect and answer whichever one you like.
Oh, so I can start. So I would say that before the pandemic, I didn't have any self-care. I didn't even, I used to think the spa was self-care before the pandemic. And then when I got stuck for 2 years with my family, and working two jobs and losing my mind, I'll be honest. I realized that
That's
there
real.
wasn't anything in my day, Monday through Sunday, that it was just for me. And what self-care was, it was stillness. It started as just an hour where I didn't speak to anyone, I didn't do anything for anyone. It was just me taking a walk, no matter how cold it was. And it was just me just alone. And it was just stillness, and it was just a time for me to kind of pray and just be still, just be happy with where I was in that moment. And then it started being, hiking and being more outdoors, because I used to work with the laptop 24/7 and my eyes would hurt, and I would feel like it's always a screen. If you're not watching Netflix on the TV, you're on your phone. If you're not on your phone, you're on your laptop. It was just too many screens. So being outside was my self-care, and it still is. Even if it's cold, I like to take a short walk, like just the fresh air, and that disconnection that I feel from the world just for those 20 minutes is the best thing for me.
Awesome. Sounds like you did a self-inventory, and I love that. So I'm gonna circle back there in a little bit, because you took time to just do some self-reflection about what was satisfying you, right? Just being still made the world of difference for you. And as you took that inventory and had some discovery, you grew appreciative of being in nature and the hikes and all of that. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, who wants to share next? I'm trying to not hog the conversation, so I'm going to circle back to that self-inventory in just a moment. But go ahead, Shekinah or Tamir.
I can go. I think for me, I didn't learn about the concept of self-care until I found myself in a pretty low period, like mental health wise. I was going through like a bout of depression, some anxiety. And so I started going to therapy then. And one of the things that I was confronted with was like, how are you caring for you? Like, this is a first step, going to therapy was a huge form of self-care. But that's when when we talk about inventory, that's when I started taking inventory of what it looked like for me to care for me and do things for myself. And so, that was around maybe 2014, 2015. So then I, started this whole journey. Eventually at work, they called me the self-care queen because I was asking everybody about it. Like, it was something we incorporated in the work that we were doing. But then I got married, and then I was like, what? What? Like it rocked me because my schedule looked different. My time looked different. We also got married a month before the pandemic. So our whole first year was in quarantine, which is very interesting, good, but also interesting.
Oh, I'm sure you have stories to tell.
So talk about, like, I went from having like my own space to now sharing space, sharing time. And so I have to say, I'm still kind of figuring out what self-care looks like for me now. And so what I know that I still do that's still really helpful is journaling. I'm like I journal, try to do it daily, but that doesn't happen. So I think another part of self-care that's really important is like self-compassion, and grace for ourselves, because I think we can, at least for me, I think of, okay, these are the things that I need to do to care for myself. But then when I don't, I also have to have the self-compassion for me and the grace for myself to know that it's okay, that there's always tomorrow. So I think self-care is a journey, as we change, as we evolve, it's going to look different, I think, for us.
Yes, I agree. I believe the combination of what you and Emmeline are both acknowledging is that taking inventory, you used the very term, knowing thyself, right? Part of loving thyself, loving myself, is knowing thyself. And we have to regularly position ourselves to take inventory, because different seasons are going to provide different levels of satisfaction for the same activity, right? Hiking right now could be self-care, but in 5 years, it could be a burden, right? I'm committed to this. I'm not connecting with nature in the same way. It may not be as satisfying. It may not give us that space to kind of unpack life, to kind of bring about some peace, it could be seen as something other than self-care if we don't do the inventory and check ourselves to really acknowledge what is it that's bringing us that contentment, that satisfaction, that pause, that window where we can just woosah, breathe, and not have any expectations of ourselves. So thank you, Tamir. That was huge. All right, Shekinah, let's hear from you.
My thoughts, like I didn't learn about self-care until I was like in young adulthood. I probably did practice it, but I didn't know it was like self-care. I found out when like I didn't do it, like I didn't do it for weeks. So I always like to exercise. That's like my moment. And I have to exercise out, like not in my house, like not home exercises. So when COVID hit, I was like, I got to exercise when I'm doing it at home. It was good, but it didn't have that social aspect, but that was still kind of my self-care. So I do agree that, you know, your self-care, it comes with the journey. It changes over time. It even changes how it looks. So maybe you can't go on a hike or just be walking down the street around the corner or something, driving to the city. But you just need to get out and have some fresh air. Like for me, I had to exercise. So it looked different. And then also as I was developing and understanding self-care, I had to get over feeling the felt of guilt, because
Yes.
a lot of people are like, well, you're supposed to be doing something like work if it's work related or beneficial. So I had to feel like I used to feel guilty, like, okay, I should be doing this instead. Like I should be working or studying. Even when I was in school, I should be studying, you know, my book instead of going to the gym. I could spend time. So I had to really give myself, you know, grace and self-compassion that no, I really need to go. I really need to, you know, work out and have those moments where it's just me in my zone away from things.
So I love that. I think you just kind of brought us back to the first the first component of this statement, the willingness and ability to allow me the right to make my own choices for myself. And I think in a nutshell, that's just what you shared with us, Shekinah, how you had to, you know, take that pause and, you know, do the self-inventory, ensure there was some self-compassion and release ourselves of that guilt. Because I even can attribute to, you know, that hour that I try and invest daily. Now, pre-COVID, every day at a certain hour, I was out for a walk. I got almost an hour walk in. Well, COVID hit, you thought that would have thrived. Like, okay, well, now this should be really where, but then there was just this overarching feeling that there was stuff to be done, and not in traditional ways. And then I think Emily mentioned it, I think it was Emily mentioned about eyes hurting with the computers and screens, that became our outlet, right? So as research is already acknowledging, there became this addiction for many of us, right? To be on screen, to be available, because we're home, right? I should be available. What do I have going on? And so many of us lost sight of the necessity to make my own choices for myself and allow others to enter the space and begin to control that, monopolize it. And some of it was innocent, right? It's just they had a need and they wanted their needs satisfied. But I have to be able to satisfy myself, that I don't need to satisfy others. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking that journey on what loving yourself is about. And so I think she kind of mentioned it based on one of the biblical scriptures, love others as you love your neighbor, as you do as yourself. And so if we're talking about loving ourselves, then of course we have to talk about loving in general. So again, I'm going to try and see if I can share the next slide. So what is love in general? Love is the willingness and ability to allow others the right to make their own choices for themselves without any assistance that they satisfy me. This was huge to me too, because first we're talking about expectations others have of us. But what expectations do we have when it comes to love being reciprocated to us? Are we insisting that they satisfy us? Or do we want to give them the same space and grace to love themselves and the ability to make their own choices, whether that's in concert or conflict with us. And so I would love to just hear that. I believe and know that each of you are in relationship with two husbands and one a partner. And so we've been mentioning the pandemic. I believe for many, love took a whole different look in the pandemic. Not that we didn't love those that mattered to us, but I remember sharing with a dear friend, I'm so thankful for a door. A door mattered in COVID because I could close it and close everybody out. And as much as you love the people that you share space with, whether it's families or partners or husbands or whomever, because it was such a concentrated time, extended time, there was this loss of boundaries. And so I'm certainly touching on something that I think will be for discussion is boundary and boundary setting, healthy boundaries, that is. So talk a little bit about your journey, if you're there, and maybe you're not, and how you are empowering those that you love to make their own choices for themselves without insistence that they satisfy you. Now, I'm gonna own this right now. I'm not 100% there. I'm not 100% there, but I certainly want to hear some of your stories, your journeys, your experiences. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Am I not alone? Is this a work in progress?
I can go. I can touch on this. So being a newlywed, newly, like 1 month newlywed, I
You
definitely
want to quantify that for a reason. We're all ears now.
December. Yeah, so in December I got married. So I'm a newlywed. So love, it looks different in marriage. It is a choice. I'm finding love is a choice. And like you said, this is the best definition. It's the willingness. I have to be willing to allow my husband to make certain choices, even if choices that I don't agree with. And I also have to really understand how I phrase it. So if there's something that he does and I don't quite agree with it, I have to tell him in love. And I use that. I go by the suggestion methods, like, hey, I feel this way about it. I suggest you going about this way. And I always say, but I just want you could do what you want to do. I love you, and I trust you to make the right decision, even though you know how I feel.
Wait, so can I just say something, kind of? When you throw that "I love you" in there, and I trust you to make the right, it's got a little bit of a, and I hope I can say this without you not feeling any type of, not a bit of a power move, like I love you, and I hope you make the right decision, like
exactly. And so I think a part of like loving yourself is know yourself. So I know certain things. I know how I could say things that'll bring him down. I know this. So just in doing your the self-care, it's important because it gets to know yourself. So I'm definitely growing in this area. Definitely growing, but what helps me is how do I want to be treated? Like I want to have the willingness to make my own choices. So I'm like, okay, I need to give him that grace to make his own choices without the satisfaction. Like I don't want to do something or him to be wanting a satisfaction from me, especially if it's not there, if I can't give it to him. Like I don't want that pressure. So that kind of helps me. Like how would I want to be treated? I'm still learning, still growing, but that's
yes. And it's an evolving process because we're talking about partners primarily now, but I'm gonna shift it to mothers and relationship because for each dynamic it's a little bit different. So I want to give someone else an opportunity to share if you want to talk about husband and or partner.
So I have to be honest, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this quote, Gwen.
Okay, I love it.
So I 100% agree with the first part of it, right? The willingness and ability to allow others the right to make their own choices for themselves. Like 100%, I get that, agree. The part that I'm having a bit of a challenge with is this last part, without any
Without.
insistence. And maybe it's the word like I think insistence,
right?
Maybe if it was worded differently, but when I think about a husband and a partner, like I do want him to satisfy me, like, you know, and as I want to also satisfy him. And so I think, I mean, it kind of reminds me of what you kind of was saying about expressing your needs, I think. So like for me, it's knowing what I need, how I want that satisfaction to look like, and then being able to express that, maybe not in an insistent way,
Right.
right? Because one of the things that I've been learning in these last 2 years is that he is not a mind reader. Even though as
Don't
much
we
as I
want them?
want
Don't we
him to
think
be,
so though? Like in
you
slight
know,
moments,
He's
like you
not
didn't know,
really.
you didn't. Telepathy is not working today.
That's not
listen.
what we signed up for.
So yeah, so I've been having to work on learning how to express my needs, and not assuming that he is reading my mind and that he just knows, and so that those needs can be satisfied, right? But then I guess it's still him making the choice to do it. I just have my part of it is knowing myself and knowing what it is that I need and then expressing that. So maybe I don't have an issue with the quote now that I kind of break it down that way.
Well, I'm going to say the word insistence is weighty. It's heavy, right? Insistence is not relinquishing and pursuing in the way that is satisfactory to me.
Yeah.
And so if the person is loving and we want to empower them to love us and love themselves first, we have to some degree, I feel you, Tamir, totally, not impose our choices for them or insist that the choices they make reflect how we love ourselves or how we want to be loved. We want them to come to that, right? We want them to graduate to that, to learn that about us. But I do believe insistence, right? That's taking a position and not flexing, not
Right.
you know, not wavering. You're stationed. You're it's almost like being on guard duty. You're not moving. You're immobile.
Yeah.
That may be a hindrance to love and experience love in its full capacity. But I hear you fully that when you're in a relationship, part of the covenant, if you will, is to love one another unconditionally and to provide satisfaction for each other in different ways. So I hear you and can totally support that perspective. And not that I need to support it, but I hear you is what I should say. I hear you totally. Yeah. All right, Emmeline, you want to jump in or?
Sure. So I'm only 6 months in with my partner, and I feel like I'm at the hardest, like at a hard place, agreeing with a lot of the things that's being said. It's like I'm with someone that he likes. He's a fireman, okay? So he's one of those people that, you know, they like the adrenaline. They need to feel like they're in action, and you know, and I fully support that, and I fell in love with him because he, you know. But it also terrifies me. So I'm learning that, you know, we're two different people that love each other, but I have to, like Shakana said, I have to use the right words to express my concerns without it coming off like I don't support your dreams, you know, because I do, and it makes him happy and it fulfills him as a person. So for me, it's like I've never been with someone that likes that side of, you know, the danger, I guess you can say. So right now I'm kind of learning how to express myself in a way where he still feels validated, and still feels comfortable with sharing his concerns, without my own worries and my hesitations getting in the way of that. And also realizing that we are still two people, you know, like, you know, we still have our own friends and our own passions, but we are also learning how to be a part of each other's lives. Because in the past I've given everything to the other person and making sure they're satisfied, and then I'm not satisfied. And then when that person leaves me, now I'm left kind of lost because I have to pick up the pieces of living the life for someone else. So with this new person, it's like I'm still trying to be me, but also still trying to be a good partner to you, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, because all of you have shared some gems that if I wasn't so engaged, I would just be able to recite them, but they're just coming full throttle. And so I hope those that are watching and participating or grabbing and snatching and learning. And Emily, I think what I appreciate most about what you indicated is looking at some of your past, right? And how it's impacting where you are. And the shift in this relationship of how you're defining love, how you're seeing love. And that, I believe, again, is that willingness and ability. Do we come into relationship with our checklist where we're not leaving room, right? Or are we leaving room, which is a willingness, or are we open or receptive to allow others to make choices that most times probably will have some variation of how we want to be loved or how they want to be loved, but it's for themselves and to give them the space to be their own person. That's what I heard you say, Emily, for him to be his own person and to experience the fulfillment based on what he's aspiring towards. And I give you kudos, because anyone that can have a relationship with a fireman and I say police officer too, you know, those two careers, you know, come with a lot of uncertainty. And so their concerns are, you know, rightfully and yours. But like you said, the words you choose in expressing that and making sure he feels validated. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you all dropping gems. So let's take it away from the partners for a minute and talk about family, because family is where we first learn love, if in healthy situations, right? And what most of us discover when we become adults is that there's a little bit of that just is a little wonky, that isn't, you know, as it can be. Or maybe we, again, develop some learnings or were exposed to some aspects of love, loving ourselves or loving others, that may be counterproductive to us leading out healthy lives of love. So who's willing to share a little bit about in your family how you have, if you have, and if you haven't, you know, the struggles, the challenge, have empowered others or seen others. Maybe you didn't empower them. Maybe it wasn't a part of your relationship with them, but you've seen them maybe take on ownership to be responsible for themselves, loving themselves, and to make the right choices for themselves and not feel insistent that they satisfy others. We want to hear a little bit about that. Okay.
I was thinking.
Right. I can see the contemplation
like
happening, and certainly, you know, recognize, let's not use names if we can, but certainly, you know, as much as we can share without it being specific or someone be like, "Oop, I know that is," you know, just a general observation or experience we'll share.
Yeah, I think for me growing up, my family, I didn't have the best. I had in some areas love was expressed, and in other areas I found out that this really wasn't love. It was kind of manipulation or something that my parents were insecure about, and it was kind of phrased as love. I'm not saying that they did it on purposely. It's just
Right.
like we talked about earlier, a generational thing. But I didn't have the best examples of how a husband loves his wife. My parents are divorced. So I thankfully God put around me people that were married, had strong marriages, and they would, even when I was single, they would talk to me like I was their friends, which I was, but like I'm struggling with this with my husband, and like up straight up stuff that I'm like, wow, you really entrust me as a single person that has no experience in this area, to just listen and even give advice to what I know. But I had a lot of good like friends and families that cultivated relationships. Even in work, I saw how families, how spouses, how they interacted, and I started to see like this is what love is really about. There's a lot of challenges that I've seen in their marriages, and the fact that they made the decision to continue to love respectfully helps me understand what love is and how love is looks like.
Yes. Awesome. I think I'm gonna co-sign that with you, Shekinah, that sometimes looking at our immediate spectrum can be limiting, right? But when we have the opportunity to have some insight and have relationship with others that will own, I appreciate you acknowledging that as a single person, there were those that were sharing with you some of the challenges, right? Because some places and spaces and even people, they paint this glory picture of what relationship looks like. Sometimes mother-daughter, sometimes daughter-father, sometimes husband-wife, sometimes girlfriend, sisters, you know, but anytime there's love, there's sacrifice. And I think Tamir, I don't remember who said it early as you were either introducing yourself or as we started out, but there's sacrifice in love. And it is our ability to have a willingness to where are we going? Are we satisfying ourselves or are we satisfying others? And part of that, it is building a community of who you can confer with, right? Who can you share with safely? And you recognize they're going to give you good counsel, right? Not bring their baggage, right? But listen, sometimes don't even say anything. That's why I use this term, a heart with ears. Sometimes I just need your heart to hear me. I don't need to respond. I don't need you to say anything. I just need you to hear me. And so it sounds like, Shekinah, you were that to some, and it equipped you for this season of life as you enter into marriage. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else want to jump into that? A family or any other type of relationship where you felt like you saw some of this at work?
Sure. So for me, my parents are still married, 32 years actually this year. And my mom's side, they're all married, all her siblings, but what it's a theme, unfortunately, is infidelity. And the woman never leaves. I don't know if it's a Hispanic thing, but it's like, you know, you stay for your kids, you make your marriage work, and then years later they are happy and it's like all forgotten. But then at home, my parents have always taught me, you know, my dad taught me, you know, you respect the woman. And if a man ever, you know, steps out on you or disrespects you, you always pick up and you leave, you know? But it's been always very conflicting for me because I feel like a lot of time people say, you know, marriages are sacrifices and everyone has their threshold of what they're willing to tolerate in their own relationships or forgive, for a better word. So I feel like for me, my parents have gave me a great foundation, but left me with a lot of questions, to be honest, because they've been married for so long, but their communication is not like 5 stars. It's not. But I'm learning that every relationship has their own, it works for them, you know, and I have to learn what works for my own marriage, you know, in the future.
Yes, that is huge. Because I have a very significant relationship where I admire that marriage totally. And because I am privy to the front and back story, like some of the nuances and just sometimes the communication, sometimes the banter, I'm just like, man, I would be so angry. Like, but that works for them. And we have to have that respect for that, because the love that I need to satisfy myself looks very different than the love that she needs to satisfy herself. And so I appreciate you offering that, Emmeline, because that's real. We always want to take a sneak peeky into somebody else's life, and we don't know it all, and recognize that we're all wired different. We're all wired differently. And congratulations to your parents for 32 years. My parents had death to you part, which has been huge for me. I'm divorced. However, most of the marriages around me similar have endured. And I don't know all the intricacies, but some of the ones I've, again, had access to front and back story, you know, there's a lot of sacrifice. There is a lot of loving themselves, and sometimes I think loving the other person a little bit more. Now, again, that's generational, right? Because we're empowered very differently. We're informed very differently. We understand our mental health. We understand our emotional health. You know, you go back 20, 25 years, that was taboo. Nobody mentioned it. You know, women probably walked around almost for lifetimes depressed, and no one acknowledged, supported, or I'm not gonna say they didn't care, but they didn't resource her. And so I don't think we're living in a day and age where the average woman subjects herself to such. But anyway, so just a little 5 cents on that. All right, Tamira, I look like I saw you getting ready to say something. Hope I didn't cut you off.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, I can share, or if you want, we can also move on to the next thing. It's really fine.
No, you got it.
I mean, I do feel really blessed with my parents, their marriage. So I was born 10 years after, like, they were married. So I always remember how long they've been married because of my age. So I know they've been married for 45 years. And you know, they've been a really great example for myself, my siblings, and I think, you know, anyone who they encounter. They're pastors. They've been pastoring for like over 20 years too. So I think for me, what I have kind of witnessed as an adult, like kind of stepping back, is I think for my mom as a woman, like I feel like my mom can do it all, even though I know she's not perfect, but this piece of like loving yourself first. I always question, I'm like, Mommy, what do you enjoy doing for yourself? You know, because she's so giving. She's like, she's a great partner. She's a great mom. She's a great pastor. She's a daughter. She cared for my grandmother, you know, as she was here with us in her last years. But I'm like, what do you do for you? Like, how do you refuel? And I mean, I think her faith really sustains her, but then just other things like pleasantries, things that she does to just satisfy her. I think she's learning and implementing some of those now, like later in life. And so yeah, so I think they've been a really good example of loving each other. But I think for my mom, it's been more of a journey of like her learning how to care for herself first in the midst of loving other people. And so it reminds me of like when we heal, we also heal those that came before us and those that are coming after. So like, you know, my sister and I have taken my mom to the spa or like take her out on dates. And so now, and then kind of seeing how then she starts some of these practices on her own. And so that's been really refreshing and really just cool to be a part of.
Awesome. It's awesome to see women experience that and come into the experience, right? May not have been exposed to it, but developed it. And that to me is growth. That is our own personal growth. So thank you for sharing that. I do know your parents, and they are lovely parents. They're kind of sparky, like, you know, I'm not gonna throw them on the bus, but they're kind of sparky, like couple. So
they have fun, which is really cool. Like 45 years in, it's really cool to see. So
that's inspirational. And you know, to those that are new, and then those that are still waiting. You know, it's just good to hear and good to know. So we're coming up on an hour, and I can't believe it moved that fast because I still got a lot of questions, but I want to honor our time and your time particularly. So if we can close out, I want you to define what love is, and whether it's a mantra, as Shekinah used earlier, a biblical scripture that's foundational for her, or your own definition. Just want to hear for our audience, for those who may have opportunity to review this or view it, what love is. And again, we're not coming as authorities. This is our perspective, our lens. So I want to give you that opportunity just to share what love is to you. And you could take it as in marriage, partnership, family, loving yourself, however you want to capture it. Yeah, they're gonna think on that one for a minute. Yeah.
I don't want to think too hard because then I feel like I'll get stuck. But I think for me, what comes up, I think love is a choice. If she kind of said that before.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say
I think, love is a choice. I think love is intention. Love is time.
Oh, you just tweaked something like the 5 love languages, but I'm not going to go there. That's going to have to be a part 2 because I want to talk about that. When you said time, that just triggered, a love language, but we're not today, folks. We're not. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think, those 3 come up for me, like choice, intention, and time. So whether that is for myself, or for others and those around me, whether it's like giving others the choice to do what they do, or choosing to love them despite, anything else or in spite of. So yeah, those are the 3 things that kind of come up for me.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Gems. Okay. Who else wants to share?
I think for me, love, I was gonna say love is a choice.
But you can reiterate that.
I love is a choice, but naturally sometimes I can choose not to love. I could choose not to love myself. I could choose not to love others, and it's easier. So for me, I have to treat it as love is a command. Like you have to love yourself, you have to love others. And that gives a certain depth and meaning to it. Like it's a command, it's not a choice. I could do it or not because the flesh is real. So I think
like I said, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes, so love is a command to me. It's a command to love.
Okay, awesome. Love it. All right, Em, want to hear from you?
One thing I would say I'll take away is the choice. I've never thought of love as a choice. Because my family, I feel like when you think of your family, like you just grow up and you love them unconditionally. It's not really like a choice, but that's a good gem I'm taking with me. I would say that love is flexible for me. You can expect people to love you the way you love them, and that was my biggest, hardest lesson to learn. So I feel like for me, love is flexible. Love looks different for different people that come into your life. And you need to love them the best way that it's healthy for you. You can't give your all to everyone. You have to give what you can, so you always have enough for yourself as well. So
okay, excellent. Woo, ladies, thank you for joining me tonight. For all those that are viewing, I know you feel like your cup is full and hopefully runneth over, but we would love to hear from you. So you can connect with Enjoying Life Fully. We have a website, enjoyinglifefully.com. We're on, I think, almost all of the social media platforms except for TikTok, just not there yet. But we're definitely on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So follow us, comment. We welcome receiving your feedback, your perspective. And if you're interested in being a guest on one of our upcoming First Fridays, please send in your information and get on the website. You can do a connect form, and I will receive your information. And if there's a particular topic that you feel like is on your heart or on your mind, or maybe resonating in your community, we welcome talking about it. I try and rotate the guests. And so this is an opportunity just to get some diversity in our lives, consider some other perspectives that we may not be exposed to or be able to experience. So just want to bid everyone well. It is still early in 2022. So I'm going to say have, the greatest 2022 you can. Seek first all other things. Oh, sorry, I said that wrong. Seek first what you believe in, and then all other things will be added to you. So just want to bid you well. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. First Friday in March.